This video is dedicated to James Humphreys. James, thank you. Sauron versus Beirut, Kardur, and Rhys the Redeemed. Well, turn on Sol Ring, hopefully, can get us into a pretty quick consecrated Sphinx, so we're pretty much relying on getting into the Sphinx with this hand. Alright, we draw into an island, so probably go for a tricycle land here, I think. No need to show our opponent a Sol Ring before we're going to make use of it. Lano our elves for what we assume is an elf player. Beseju is a haste enabler for the Rakdos player. And nothing from Beirut, so see what we draw into here. Okay, polluted delta. So do we get down the Nazgul here? Suppose we can, go Sol Ring into the Nazgul, and we can go for being tempted by the ring and get that going. Do have all 9 of the Nazgul in here, by the way. I needed to put the 9 Nazgul in at least one deck, and this seemed like the best one to put it in. So that triggers the Nazgul when we're tempted and puts a plus counter on itself straight away. So now the Ring Bearer is legendary and can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. And the Ring Bearer is obviously our one creature that's in play. Darksteel Citadel for Rhys. And see the Commander enter play. Followed by an Elvish Vanguard. Okay, the Urborg is going to fix our black mana, and I'm pretty sure we've got Cabal Coffers in here, so I don't mind seeing that. A Talisman as well, but just taking the mana burn and going straight over to the mono green player. A Rampant Growth for the Beirut player. Okay, another Nazgul for us, so yeah, we could level up the ring here with another Nazgul and make it so that we loot whenever it swings in. Yeah, and that will give us an excuse to get down a tap land, so I think that's fine. Play another Nazgul. The ring tempts us again when it enters, of course, so a plus counter on all of our wraiths. And the same Nazgul can be the Ring Bearer, because obviously it has, or it doesn't have Summoning Sickness. So drop a land, and we're already at level 2 of 4 on the ring. Let's go over here. We should be able to get through to this player easily enough, because the worms are going to be pretty big, I would think. That puts the trigger on the stack from the ring, so we will loot. And okay, that's a good one to keep hold of, a Widespread Brutality. So I think until we get our commander online, the Glinthorn Buccaneer isn't going to be particularly helpful, so get rid of that. Ready for the likely a Consecrated Sphinx next turn. Elvish Harbinger is the next elf from our opponent, and they'll be able to search for an elf and put it on top, so we'll at least know what they're drawing into. Next turn, the Vanguard gets a plus counter as well. Alright, and that is an Elvish Archdruid, so the quicker we can get an army going, the better the Widespread Brutality is going to be. Maybe we just hold off on the Consecrated Sphinx. Not swinging in with any of the elves, surprisingly. Only red mana from the Rakdos player is in the form of the Talisman, but decides to use the Talisman, getting pinged, and Kardur Doomscourge into play. Sylvan Library is a really good one. They obviously just drew into that. Not whether they've got a Bonder's Enclave as well in play. Not seeing any worms from the Worm Tribal deck yet, though. Now, the Polluted Delta can tap for mana thanks to Urborg, but we can't rely on that forever because it's our opponent's. So we'll just go for a Steam Vents in tapped here, I think. Okay, Toothy, along with Consecrated Sphinx, is going to be insane, so I wonder if we bide our time and wait for a board wipe. Maybe get down the commander here and make the Widespread Brutality better. So yeah, let's go for the Bloodstained Mire, and I think I will get down the commander here. Maybe could have gone for drawing a card with the Nazgul first. Alright, so let's go with the Ring-Bearing Nazgul in towards the Beirut player. Just noticing this is D-Manny, by the way, who we've played on the channel before. I can't remember what deck he was playing last time, but people really liked it. It was an interesting one. I think he's one of PJ's patrons from Commander Replay, if my memory serves me. And the Nazgul here can go into the left. So spread the damage around a little bit. Obviously can't attack this player. And that will have us loot thanks to the ring. Alright, a Victimize. That's tempting. Maybe we just get rid of the Psychosis Crawler? Or do we want the Toothy? Are we going to get our graveyard exiled is the question. Let's be fun and risk a Consecrated Sphinx getting exiled from the bin. We're not against blue players, so hopefully we won't get countered, but next turn might be able to victimize an army and get out the Glinthorn Buccaneer and the Consecrated Sphinx off the Victimize, so yeah, fingers crossed. If we manage to get into our land first, we might be able to go for the Widespread Brutality first as well. Well, there's some ramp in the form of Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. They've got 4 green pips at the moment, so they'll gain a mana when they do the thing into that. We know that they've drawn into the Archdruid this turn. Okay, and some kind of Convoke spell maybe? Nope, it is a Runetail Kitsune. So that will get transformed straight away. It is our first Orc army that we're making here. So this is a pretty good card against the Rakdos player, because even if they're forced to swing in, they'll not be able to take damage in the command zone, or in the red zone. Now seeing that Elvish Archdruid, and this is in the creature area here, but it is a legendary enchantment, which is worth noting. Going to struggle to get rid of that in a Grixis deck. Alright, so the 2-2, and the 4-4, and the 2-3 going in against us. I think we're fine to block with an army token here if we're going to sacrifice it to the Victimize anyway. So we'll block 4 damage there, and 2 commander damage, and we'll just take 2 from the elves. So at the very worst case scenario, the Sauron just gives us a chump blocker every turn. Kardur swings in towards us now, so I'm just going to assume that they can get rid of our Sauron. Might be going for a board wipe, which is one of the main ways to get rid of this thing. And yeah, okay, that's surprising. So they played out their commander and then went straight into a damnation, so I'm assuming that they've only just drawn into that. So maybe victimizing our commander and the Consecrated Sphinx back out would be a good idea. That does assume that we can... Yeah, that does assume that we can get into a land next turn. I'm going to leave my commander in the command zone, even if it takes a turn cycle to get it out again. And this plays into the Beirut player's turn, I can't help but think. A Sauron, first of all. And there we see, that's an excellent worm as well. Defiler of Vigour, ending at 4 cards in hand and 32 life, so not sure how much life he's put into the Sylvan Library so far. A land here would be good. Okay, I'll... How much mana do we have? 6 mana means we can't make use of the Seagate. I would have played that. No doubt got into a land. Yeah, I'm going to bolt down the Seagate Restoration as a land, and then we're going to have to sacrifice the Toothy, unfortunately. But I do want my commander in play if I can. So down comes Toothy, imaginary friend. Not going to bother shuffling because we're not going to find a peer, and we don't know what's on top of our library anyway. And with that we can go Victimize. I'll point it at the Sauron and at the Consecrated Sphinx, so this is going to pay off as a gamble for us apparently. I'm assuming that my opponents can't interfere here. So get rid of Toothy, trade it out for these two, so Sauron, and the Consecrated Sphinx is going to refill our hand over the next turn cycle, I hope. Might be that there's a sword or something here, but we go straight through the upkeep and into the draw step, so we'll draw at least 2 cards to the Sphinx. Alright, gets us into some more mana. There is Relic of Sauron. We can go up to level 3 on the ring with another Nazgul. Elvish Warmaster will make us an army token. Only 1 card left in the elf player's hand though. And out comes Rhys again for only 3 mana. That is an elf entering play of course, so it will trigger the Elvish Warmaster and make an elf token. Go straight through to the draw step of the Kardur player as well, so once again going to draw 2 more cards, and Consecrated Sphinx has already done its job. Gets us into a Blood Crypt and a Malakir Rebirth. Okay, and there is a Necromantic Selection, so again going to wipe the board, and they steal away the Consecrated Sphinx from us with that. We will put our commander in the command zone this time. Unfortunately couldn't hold up the mana to protect that, of course. Otherwise it would have been nice to be able to go for the Malakir Rebirth there. Now Sylvan Library does count as drawing the cards, so our opponent's got a decision to make here, because he could draw the Consecrated Sphinx controller 6 cards here. So the Rakdos player's up at 6 cards in hand, and yep, decides to draw the cards with the Sylvan Library. And this time seeing a Bramble Worm with Reach and Trample, gain 5 life when it enters, and gain 5 life by exiling it from the bin. Alright, well we did refill our hand at least. There's a Shizo, which I don't mind. The Rakdos player continuing to draw a bunch. So let's throw in the Shizo so that we can better get through things. As much as I want to get down my commander here, we can't hold up the Malakir Rebirth, so 2, 4, 6, 8, yeah, can't hold that up, so maybe just ramp with the Relic of Sauron. And might as well get down the Psychosis Crawler, I think. And we'll just hold up the Malakir Rebirth. I don't think I'm all that interested in protecting the Psychosis Crawler, to be honest. Darling of the Masses now. Whenever it attacks, create a citizen token. And it gives a buff to citizens as well. Rakdos Locket for the Rakdos player. And we see Kardur Doomscourge into play again. Yeah, if I planned out the turn a bit better previously, if I'm not bothered about protecting the Psychosis Crawler, I shouldn't have held up the Malakir Rebirth with the Shizo. I should have just got this down into play tapped, so hopefully that 2 life doesn't matter, assuming that we have to shock it in next turn. Got an attack from the Consecrated Sphinx to go yet, and it goes into the Elf player. So we've got the Consecrated Sphinx and the Sylvan Library shenanigans again. There's a Midnight Reaper and a land have been discarded by the Rakdos player. A Caged Sun for the mono green player means that there's 6 mana held up for the from the basics here. I think they're all snow lands here, which suggests that there'll be an extra planar lens in the deck. Yeah, they are all snow. And now we see a Selvala ready for the big worms to come into play. Alright, so it's looking like we could have gone for our commander, but maybe the Rakdos player's holding on to spot removal for it. We'll have to sacrifice his Kardur in order to play the spot removal though. Could have edict effects. An 8/7 goes in at the elf player as well. That is, yeah, reach and trample. And this jumping in the way because it can't have damage dealt to it, so just for damage trampling through, I'll probably swing in this way as well because this won't be too big. Alright, another Nazgul for us, so what's that? 4 of the Nazgul we've seen so far. Consecrated Sphinx triggers again. Thankfully not under our control because the Psychosis Crawler will only have our opponents lose 1 life as opposed to 3. Alright, so ultimately what we want to do here I think is get our commander down again and then set up the Widespread Brutality. It does mean giving another turn cycle with this thing, but while their mana isn't too crazy, at least they can't play everything that they're drawing into. Might be setting up some reanimation shenanigans, but I think all we can ultimately do here is go for our commander and hold up the Malakir Rebirth. Should be able to get the shot landing tapped as well. Alright, so that means Selvala triggers. I think we actually draw a card from the Selvala here. Oh no, we don't. That is an 8-power creature, so not quite. And then before we lose any cards, I'll go in with the Psychosis Crawler over here again so that they can just chump block it, because I think we're all looking in the direction of the Rakdos player at the moment, although people might be looking at me. Alright, so they just chump block that like we thought they would, so 2 damage markers on this means that we can lose 2 cards from hand and it will still have 3 toughness, so we can go for a Nazgul here actually. Shock in the Blood Crypt, and again hope that that life doesn't matter. So the Nazgul comes down, we will level this up to level 3, meaning that whenever a Ring Bearer becomes blocked by a creature, the creature's controller sacks it at the end of combat. So that's one way of getting around the shenanigans over here. And yeah, that will be able to block unfortunately, assuming it doesn't swing in next turn. But everything else is pretty big, so there's an argument to be made for the Nazgul being the Ring Bearer. I think we'll try that for a turn cycle. Now I've obviously decided to go for looking at more cards here as opposed to holding up the Malakir Rebirth. I'm not sure that's an intelligent play, but I'll just keep my fingers crossed here. I think I want to start going a little bit faster, so let's do the wheel, discard 3 and draw 4. And that will draw a bunch with the Consecrated Sphinx. Again, they don't really have the mana to go for it. There's a Filth, which can make our stuff unblockable as long as the Urborg stays in play. It's obviously my own Urborg I'd usually be reliant on. Whispering Madness as well, a Talisman, Buried Alive, and obviously Psychosis Crawler. We drew 4 cards, so each opponent loses 4 life. Yeah, our Whispering Madness might open up the game again against the Consecrated Sphinx player, because he'll have a bunch of cards in hand after his discard phase by the time he gets round to us. So yeah, I think this is much more interesting than just holding up the Malakir Rebirth and trying to keep our commander in play, even though that might have been the intelligent way to play it. Okay, and the Darling of the Masses is attacking us. Doesn't really matter. We'll just block with our 3 toughness Nazgul. White does have some things like, I think it's got sacrifice a blocking creature and stuff like that, so not going to risk throwing the Sauron in the way of that. Not likely that we'll see that, but we'll play around it anyway. No reason not to. And the Rhys into play again. Rhys struggling because we've seen 2 board wipes so far, and obviously an elf tokens build doesn't do well with board wipes. Okay, there's a Sword of Hearth and Home in play and equipped to the Sphinx, which will be able to hit anyone it likes, really. There's a Chromatic Lantern as well, and a Cabal Coffers, so here's the card draw coming into play. So now they've actually got the mana to go with all the cards in hand. Ashnod's Altar going to be able to sacrifice things as well, which might be part of a combo. We'll assume that the Flicker Shenanigans is simply for the commander to keep them from being attacked here. Okay, we're getting attacked by our own Sphinx. There'll be a little bit of land ramp here and some Flicker Shenanigans unless the green player has something to say about it. That is a Blessed Respite. Shuffles Graveyard into Library. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn, so that is simply to stop the trigger on this. And there is a Skullcrack. Players can't gain life this turn. And it's 3 damage to a player or planeswalker. Okay, that was supposed to prevent all combat damage this turn, wasn't it? Why did that not work? I'm obviously missing something. So anyway, they've got a land and they flickered their commander, so we can't attack them next turn. Skullclamp somehow counter that? Oh, it says damage can't be prevented this turn, that's why. So that's well played by our opponent. Yeah, skip that line of text. Now seeing a Blood Artist, I was considering putting... I did have a few iterations of this deck, or it was one deck, but it was pulling in too many different directions. I was looking at Zulaport and Blood Artist and the Bastion of Remembrance as some aristocrat effects, because then with a sack outlet, every time an opponent casts a spell, you can sacrifice this as a 1-1. And throughout a turn cycle, that might actually really mount up. So it might still be worth doing something like that. Alright, Sylvan Library triggering again for Beirut. Not going for it this time, so staying at 9 cards in hand. Doesn't really matter either way. Either way, we're going to refill our hands with this thing. So I think the Psychosis Crawler might actually be more relevant than I assumed it was going to be. Bunch of mana being made by the Salvala. And a Zendikar Resurgence, so lots of mana being made over here. Hasn't been all that lucky in getting into too many worms, unfortunately. But 2 board wipes early in the game's pretty rough on creature-based decks. Alright, now seeing Beirut, that will cantrip on the Zendikar Resurgent. So still at 4 in hand. That does mean Consecrated Sphinx will draw yet again. And it looks as though we're keeping our Sauron, thankfully. So the risk paid off in looking at new cards. Kodama's Reach for even more mana. Noteworthy that this thing is a 10-9 with Trample. If the 10-9 coming in towards us... Oh, actually, we've got a 10-10 Orc army, haven't we? So, are we worried about that? Yeah, let's just get rid of their big 10-powered worm, I suppose. Easy come, easy go. Argument to be made for his chump blocking with a Nazgul there, because we could go for the Whispering Madness straight away to discard this. And that would have made the 10-10 unblockable, but it's this player I'm more concerned with than anything. So being able to hit one of these 2 isn't necessarily on my list of things that I need to do right away. Anyway, the Blood Artist is going to drain us for a couple. We lost life to the Kardur as well because an attacking creature died. Alright, now I'm pretty sure this is a May ability. Yeah, you may draw 2 cards, because otherwise we'd be at risk of decking our opponent, because we're about to draw 13... because they're going to draw during our main phase, you have to assume. Or during our draw step, I should say. So our opponents lose a life to the Psychosis Crawler, they draw up to 13. And that would obviously mean that if each of us draw 13, then... what's that? 13, 9 cards drawn in total, double that is 78, I think. Anyway, with it being a May ability, it doesn't matter. Get into a land, which I'm not against. So drop the land, we'll make use of the Talisman. And then there's always a chance that we're going to miss the mana, but using Buried Alive while we can is probably going to be a good idea. Not really too much use for Buried Alive other than putting the Incarnations in the deck. I could Wonder, but we do have Anger in the deck. So let's see here. We can definitely grab Sheoldred. I imagine I'll regret not throwing Anger in the bin. We do control a mountain, so all our stuff will have haste there. And then maybe Toxrill is a good idea. I'm thinking if we get to reanimate Sheoldred, then we'll be able to reanimate something else, but it all depends on what we draw, obviously. Yeah, Toxrill isn't the worst thing to throw in there. And then we'll play ourselves a Whispering Madness. And we'll actually be able to wheel twice this turn because the Cypher is going to be relevant with an unblockable creature. So we've still got 4 mana available. We did drop a land this turn, didn't we? So only going to be 4 mana most likely. Okay, and Beirut doing something in response here is surprising. Not sure how a green player can interfere with a wheel, but see what happens. Okay, return X non-legendary cards from graveyard to hand, so just targeting the Blessed Respite here, and he's going to have to cast it, because it's going to be discarded to the Whispering Madness in a minute. Grabbed it back with the ability on the Shigeki, by the way. Alright, and there's a Dismember. Having to go on to the Psychosis Crawler before a bunch of damage is dealt. I'm more bothered about the cards, to be honest. Than would have been nice to do a bunch of damage with this, but still, we'll take what we can get here. So a creature going down triggers the Blood Artist again. Now, looks like the madness is going to resolve here, so we'll get this elf player back into it. Nope, still something from the green player. Exiling this to gain 5 life, and then we do see the Blessed Respite, and targeting himself with that to get his graveyard back. Does mean that combat damage isn't going to be relevant this turn, but it's this player I want to be attacking anyway, like I've said, so we weren't getting through there anyway. And we just need to hope all the triggers from the Consecrated Sphinx don't crash the client here, really. There they all are. So I'm not going to auto-yield to a lot of that. We will use the Cypher ability. Yeah, might as well put it on the Commander, I think. Didn't manage to get into another draw pain effect, unfortunately. Should be able to chain off some stuff, though. There's a Chandra's Ignition, which is tempting. Alright, so managed to get the triggers on the stack. I'm just going to... I don't trust that this player won't auto-yield to them, because that's typically what you do on Magic Online. If one of us, at least one of us, isn't auto-yielded, then it shouldn't take forever. Okay, yeah, see, he has auto-yielded, so if all 4 of us had done that, the client would have to do all the work of passing priority of all this, and it doesn't like it, so that's why I'm doing this manually, even though it takes longer. People complain about my clock sometimes, but this is why I do it to, well, not always, but sometimes this is why my clock is so far behind, because I have to play with the client. Looks as though the Rakdos player is saying no to a bunch of this stuff, which is actually distinctly worse with our Jeska's Will in hand. Still gain a bunch of mana from it, so not too worried. Dockside still ought to be half decent as well. In fact, it's really good, considering the artifacts and enchantments that are in play. Alright, so the client should be able to manage with this many triggers on the stack, so auto-yield to those. Alright, so we've gone through to combat here. We can trigger the ring on attack, but we can't deal any combat damage here thanks to the green player. And we actually have to attack with everything anyway, don't we? So best that we don't play any creatures into the board first, because we do have haste and we would be forced to attack with them. So Sauron to the left, along with the Nazgul, and the army to the right. And that triggers the ring, so we will get a loot. And okay, Archfiend of Ifnir, that's hell of a draw, so get rid of a Shockland. Triggers the Consecrated Sphinx again. 48 cards left in the library over there, so they can afford to be drawing cards now, but deciding not to again. Okay, now, we can make a bunch of mana with the Dockside and the Jeska's Will. I want to be careful how many cards we're discarding, because we want to make the Archfiend of Ifnir relevant, really. So let's go Dockside first. It's noteworthy on Magic Online that this seems to be going on the stack. I don't think it's a mana ability, so I don't think it's supposed to be doing that, but that does mean that people will have an opportunity to counter that, which I don't think they should be able to with a mana ability. So anyway, throw out the Dockside Extortionist, and I think we get 10 mana from this, so Vala does nothing. Okay, actually got 11 treasures there, so let's get down the Archfiend as soon as we can. Actually going to go for the Jeska's Will first so that we can put the red mana into the Archfiend. It's a better use of the mana, I think, so we'll do both of these. Point it at the Grixis player. Alright, and that allows us into Nightscape Familiar, which I don't mind. Call to the Ring. Yeah, I mean, that can trigger our commander every turn. We'll see yet, though. I definitely want the Archfiend of Ifnir into play. Got 12 red mana to play with here as well, so we can save our treasures. And then we'll go for that Nightscape Familiar, just because I want to get down the Saruman as well, and that will cost only 3 mana if I get down the Familiar first. Can really start piling up counters on the Orc army and maybe make Kazul's Fury more relevant, although we're probably going to wheel this turn. So out comes Saruman of the White Hand. Alright, and then are we just going to hope that we can get into another Nazgul here? We'll discard all this, and it's not going to be enough to get rid of the Consecrated Sphinx, unfortunately. I've gone a card too deep, I think, so maybe shouldn't have got this down. But yeah, anyway, we'll throw down a Nazgul, and that will have us be tempted by the ring, which means we go up to level 4 and max out the ring here. I suppose we could have got down Call of the Ring to put an 8th card in our hand, could have put life into that. And we'll just make the Nightscape Familiar the ring bearer so that we can definitely get through to something if we want to. So both of the Nazgul will trigger and put a plus counter on each Wraith. And we could say no to Sauron here and get down another Nazgul, but I think it would be a good idea to just discard as many cards as possible and wipe our opponent's boards. So we'll say yes to that and only draw 4 cards. So Archfiend of Ifnir, only going to do -7/-7, like I said, leaving this in play unfortunately. Consecrated Sphinx triggers again, and didn't get into much of anything there, annoyingly. Blood Artist is going to trigger when creatures die, but the Blood Artist goes down itself before anything else. So we're getting the Blood Artist pointed at us. Okay, they just sacrificed the... Yeah, they've just assumed that the Consecrated Sphinx is going down there. They've actually sacrificed it to the Ashnod's altar in order to maximise the Blood Artist triggers, but yeah, that wouldn't have gone down there. Archfiend of Ifnir obviously puts the minus counters on one at a time. Still not drawing cards to the Consecrated Sphinx, so he's obviously very much happy with what he has in hand. And it's likely we'll see another board wipe anyway, because our opponents all have massive handfuls of cards, getting pinged 3 times by the Blood Artist, because as it went down it saw a couple of other creatures go with it. Alright, so successfully wiping the board, might as well get down this Talisman, as this cat sits on the keyboard. Awesome, thank you cat. So we amass X on the Orcs, so we're going to make this slightly bigger. I don't think it's going to be relevant now, but through the turn cycle it's going to have Swamp Walk and Haste still, so might be able to hit someone for a bunch of damage. And might as well go for being tempted by the ring so that we can ditch this hand and get a new one. And that will trigger Saruman the White Hand as well, and buff our army up even further. So that is now a 6/6. And that is us finally done. Big thank you to my opponents for being patient and playing that out. I mean, they've got gripfuls of cards now, so they've got an incentive to play it out. So it's time to see which one of our opponents drew into a board wipe in all that. Finhorn Elves for the elf player. And following that up with a Vivian Reed. So our army sits at an 8/8 with Ward 2. And Vivian, going for looking at the top 4 cards, can put a creature or a land from amongst them into hand, and reveals a Llanowar tribe to put into hand at 11 cards, and we'll have to discard down to hand size now. Surprised our opponent bothered going for a Planeswalker there with all the unblockable we have, but he's maybe assuming on another board wipe from the Rakdos player. Kardur Doomscourge again, doing some work protecting our opponent this game. And following that up with a Grave Pact. They do have a sack outlet in play, but hardly any creatures, thankfully. Still have 3, 4, 5, 6 mana, 7 available, I think. Alright, there's a Phyrexian Reclamation as well to grab back the Blood Artist. Is going to be the first target, I would think. Plenty of creatures in here, I would assume. Just noticing Splinter Twin, actually, so I'm assuming our opponent's buying himself time, ready to go for combos if Splinter Twin is in here. And now we see a Victimize, so the commander's going to go down, brings back a Blood Artist and something else. It is a Solemn Simulacrum, comes in tapped, doesn't matter because we can't attack our opponent thanks to the commander. And left the Kardur in the library, so they'll be able to fish it out with the Phyrexian Reclamation. We're all forced to sacrifice a creature thanks to the Grave Pact. So I'll just get rid of Dockside, maybe we can reanimate it later. And Blood Artist being pointed at us when the creatures die, so yeah, we're going to have to try and get rid of that player somehow soon. Not sure if we can get into Fling at some point. This is a 12/12 now. Sacrificing the Solemn draws a card and activates Grave Pact and Blood Artist again. The Grave Pact will activate the Blood Artist as well. Alright, so the Elf player just deciding to scoop it up there. Enchantments aren't something we're going to best deal with in Grixis, not very easily. So why don't we... Yeah, I want to hold on to our Ring Bearer, really. Let's just get rid of a Nazgul here, I think. And like I said, sacrificing that triggers Blood Artist again. And sacrificing the Blood Artist itself, so... Yeah, we'll get rid of the Nightscape Familiar. Don't think it's going to be that relevant that we have a Ring Bearer, because we've got the Call to the Ring next turn anyway. So we can always just make one with that. Alright, a Massacre Worm now. So... that thing won't die. I don't think any of our things will die here. We've got big toughness on all these things. Does double up on the aristocrat effects though. And then following that up with an expedition map. So now over to the worm player's turn. Sylvan Library triggering again. And there is a Field of Ruin going to blow up the Cabal coffers. And we get to ramp a little bit off that as well. Argument to be made for running Demolition Field nowadays, so that it's just you and the person whose Cabal coffers you blew up get a land. Well, I won't complain about getting one myself here, we'll just grab a mountain. Alright, saw an Azuri's Predation there, so that was 4 damage to all of our creatures effectively. And how many creatures did we lose there? Lost the Saruman. If it's 4 damage, how did we lose this? Am I misunderstanding something here? Oh, they get a +1 buff from this. How is this worded? Yeah, they just fight, so it's 5 damage to all of our creatures basically, and that could make all the difference, because yeah, we end up plummeting down to 3 thanks to the Massacre Worm. And then we have to sacrifice... yeah, we'll have to sacrifice the army token. I'm actually not looking in the direction of the green player. It's really, all game it's been this player I've been concentrating on, but everyone's been worried about us. Our last couple of turns have been pretty powerful in all fairness. But creature-based decks not being allowed to attack has really bought some time over here. And now a World Spine Worm. So that's a 15-15 trample to worry about. Cantrips on the Zendikar Resurgent. They've still got more mana after this. Then a Penumbra Worm as well. 6-6, but when it dies it leaves a 6-6 behind. Both have trample. And in green it might be that you can deal with things like the Grave Pact and the Sword. All the things that we might be having issues with here. The Phyrexian Reclamation as well. Bad matchup for us against enchantments. Just have to see what we can wheel around here. So the ring tempts us at the beginning of the turn. Could put 2 life into this. I think it's best to conserve our life as best we can. But also I'm worried about us drawing into something relevant and then having to discard it to the Saruman or the Sauron, because I want to discard these lands. Make an Orc army, our ring bearer, so with this being depleted in power and toughness it can at least get straight through here. And we could put the... yeah, of course, we can put the triggers on the stack differently, can't we? So, yeah, we can discard our hand here and draw 4. Would have liked to have played the Urborg, because we can't rely on this one forever. And we do have Swamp Walk to think of. But yes, we will draw 4 to the Sauron. Okay, reanimate onto the dock side means we don't put life into Call of the Ring. Otawara can bounce something. We've got 2 legendaries thanks to... the Ring Bearer always being legendary. So we say no to Call of the Ring. Drawing a card for the turn as well is a Fierce Guardianship. So throw down the command tower. We will reanimate the Dockside Extortionist. Go down to 1 life with this. Makes us a bunch of treasure tokens. We've got 14 in total now, so I think we're fine to... Otawara should cost us only 2. So we'll... could bounce this and force them to replay it. Yeah, I think that's probably going to be a good idea. I mean, the green player is going to take us out next turn anyway, most likely, so might as well try and help out on the way out. And then we can play ourselves a Nazgul to be tempted by the ring again, which will obviously do some wheeling for us. Noteworthy that a couple of the fetches that I've left in play have been relevant, because if we'd taken 1 life to them, then we wouldn't have been able to carry on here with the dockside. So the Ring Bearer can be the Orc army still, and we're tempted by the rings, so Call of the Ring triggers, the Nazgul puts a plus counter on the Wraiths, and the Sauron is going to draw us 4 cards again. This is obviously more of a thematic deck, but you can see what Sauron would do here if you're thinking of being able to load up your graveyard and consistently draw a bunch of cards. We don't have any combos or anything like that in the deck. Alright, now we've got an Animate Dead available to us. Can be tempted by the ring with this again. So if we go Animate Dead, what do we want to grab back? Blood Artist could be an intelligent play. If our opponent here wasn't at such a high life total, we could go for something like Glinthorn Buccaneer and try to keep chaining off, but we can't rely on that anyway. Yeah, we're not going to do anything anyway because of the, I mean, there's the Massacre Worm here. And if we don't grab the Blood Artist, our opponent will. So maybe we do just try and deal a bunch of damage with Psychosis Crawler, see how far we can get for the fun of it. So go for Psychosis Crawler. And Psychosis Crawler triggers on draw as opposed to discard, so going to be slightly better than the Buccaneer, I think. We will bounce the World Spine Worm back to the green player's hand, seeing as how he's been a thorn in our side as well. And the Orc can still be the Ring Bearer. I was hoping to draw into Shadow Spear or something like that, which we might still do yet. Plus counter and draw 4 again. Alright, no such luck having the ring tempt us again. I mean, that was always going to be the case, I think. Noteworthy that we have got into Smaug, the Cavern Horde Dragon. And we do have another means of card draw. We can loot with the Orc Army token, so we could still keep going if we're really lucky. Oh, we've got this as well, don't forget. So, yeah, maybe crack that as well. This thing is only going to cost us 3 mana, so we'll go for that now. And then let's get rid of the Relic of Sauron now. Okay, gets us into the Locust God. There is a Ruthless Technomancer, which we haven't had too big an army, unfortunately, this game. Discard a tap land. We can get down the Locust God here, and that's a rummage effect for us. But might be able to draw into something more relevant, so yeah, I think we go through to attacks here. Got Swamp Walk on our creatures, so each of those creatures has to attack, whether we like it or not, but they all get through anyway. We draw and discard a card to the ring, which is just another land unfortunately, so get rid of a fetch. And we've got our opponent only down to 28 unfortunately, because he hasn't taken any attacks all game, near enough. Alright, so D-Money going down. I appreciate him playing that out, because it has been quite a long drawn out one here. Let's see. Oh, of course, we can wheel yet, can't we? Which is 8 cards. I totally forgot about the Cypher. So, yeah, we'll put that on the stack first. Or maybe, yeah, should have had it resolved first, I suppose. The dragon can make a bunch of artifacts. Each opponent loses 3 life to the ring, which is going to help chip away at our opponent. I'll be absolutely amazed if we can win this one. The ring tempts us, so we'll just go for the Orc Army again. And I'm hoping that we still get a bunch of treasures from this thing, even though we've just taken a player out. Because obviously he doesn't control all the artifacts and stuff if he's not in play anymore. Do have the Psychosis Crawler in play still, so the Nazgul puts a plus counter on itself. We can discard our hand and draw 4, so that's 4 more damage that we're doing from the Psychosis Crawler. Alright, there's a Windfall that we're not going to get to keep, annoyingly. I think it's risky. I mean, I suppose we're going to Windfall either way, aren't we? Because Sauron's is a Windfall. We actually draw 8 cards regardless, so I don't think it really matters. Getting into another Nazgul to lose a Temptation of the Ring doesn't feel good, though. Anyway, a copy of the Whispering Madness on the stack. Don't think I've ever had Cypher be relevant before. I don't think we got any treasure tokens from the dragon either, which I don't know if that's how the rules are supposed to work or if that's a Magic Online thing, but yeah, that doesn't feel good to not get anything from that. Although we do get into a Wheel of Fortune here anyway. More Temptations of the Ring as well. So, can we do this? Is it feasible? If we're tempted by the ring, we will discard all this and draw 4, so might as well maximise the draws that we make and go for Wheel of Fortune and keep our fingers crossed. I'm wondering if it'd be worth being able to play at instant speed with a Leyline of Anticipation or Chromatic Orrery, something like that, because being able to get down the Nazgul at instant speed and put the Temptation of the Ring on the stack along with wheels and stuff, and that way we could stack up the triggers from our commander. Yeah, it might be something worth considering. Okay, pretty much the only thing we've got available to us now is we've been stopped in our tracks. If we just got into Yeah, another Nazgul or something. We've just drawn in slightly the wrong order. It's amazing how far we've got, though. I think we just try our luck with a Cyclonic Rift and, yeah, I mean, just hope. Still impressed with what we've been able to do here. But ultimately, all our opponent really needs to do is fish out, what is it called, the Massacre Worm? And it will kill off the Dockside Extortionist, so our opponent should have us here. So there is the Blood Artist. Yeah, so, I mean, all they do here, if we go for Cyclonic Rift, they just... Well, all they have to do is float mana, and then replay the Blood Artist and a sack outlet. So, I mean, we just let it into play and let them sacrifice it, and that should be us done. Yeah, just unfortunate that we couldn't be tempted by the ring one last time. That's... Yeah, I think that was really good going, that. Got them down to 4 from 35, so... Just shows you what you can do with... good game to my opponent. Just shows you what you can do with Sauron, the Dark Lord. I'm really happy with that. Had a couple of solitaire turns there in the end, so big thank you to my opponents for playing it out. Let's see how close we were to being tempted again. I think we had a really lucky run of cards there. Alright, yeah, a few more cards would have got us into what we wanted. We were desperate for something like a Shadow Spear, and Ring Sight is another means of being tempted. But like I said, it was fun regardless. Hopefully you all enjoyed it as well. Sauron the Dark Lord, if you want to see more from it, then let me know. Massive thank you to the patrons as always. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.